So I built a house out in Goode. If you don't know where Goode is like go to Forest and go out about 10 miles, and right in the middle of nowhere you'll find Goode. On one side you've got the Goode Country Store. And that's about the extent. We've actually even got a post office out there. There are no street lights. And when you buy a piece of property in Goode, there's very little light that you can see if you're driving by night unless you have your lights on. So when we built this house, we had this whole idea that we were going to have these lights outside to illuminate the driveway, because once you turn down the driveway and go down the curves, it's very difficult to see. And yet that was 5 years ago. We put the electrical in the ground. We did everything that we needed to do, but we ran out of money when we were building the house. Fast forward to last year, we finally got to the place where we bought the lights to put outside. They were taken out and they were perfectly positioned in places to illuminate the dark areas, to give some light at night. But then they just sat there, waiting for an electrician to show up to be able to hook the lights up to the electrical lines that had been in the ground for 5 years. And finally, about 2 months ago, it finally happened. The electrician, we get the call, the electrician is showing up. He shows up, he hooks up the lights, and I remember the first night coming up and thinking, these small little lights made such a huge difference. It took away all of the darkness that was there and just brightened everything up. It allowed us to see exactly where we were walking at night so that we didn't stumble over anything. It changed the way that we looked at everything, because that light made a big difference. And even though we had had all of the tools, even though we had had the lights and the electricity and everything was hot until it was actually hooked up, there was still no light there. Which reminds me of a story from years ago. And I don't know if it's a true story or not, but there's a story that was told back in the 1800s. There was a guy whose job was to stand at a railroad crossing at night with a lamp. And his job was, as the train was approaching, was to swing the lamp back and forth to make sure that everybody knew that there was a train coming. However, on that night, there was a family riding in a horse and buggy, and that night, even though the man was standing out there and swinging the light, they proceeded through and they were hit by the train, and the entire family was killed. And they questioned him after that. They asked him the questions. Did you know the train was coming? He said, yes, I knew the train was coming. It was right on time like it always was. They said, did you do your job? Did you go out there and did you swing the lamp back and forth to let everybody know? And he said, yes, I did that. And so they dropped the investigation, considered it a freak accident of what had happened that night. Years later, on the man's deathbed, he said he was still grieved over the fact that this family had died because of his actions, because he felt like he had something to do with it. And his friend looked at him on his deathbed and he said, but they cleared you. You did everything that they asked you to do. He said, they didn't ask me one question. They didn't ask me if my light was lit. So he was out there swinging a lantern just as hard as he could, but he forgot to light the lamp. And because of that, this family died. And I thought about all of that. And as we go into this big breakfast at the church next Saturday, I wanted to share something that I can only imagine that these people would have felt when they were surrounding Jesus over 2,000 years ago. The crowds had pressed in. They were coming in tight. His disciples were around him. He moved up to the mountaintop. They pressed in because they had heard of all of the things that this man had done, the miracles that he had performed. And they wanted to hear, what did this man have to say? And they were all what you would consider the lowly part of society. They didn't have any standing. They were fishermen. They were prostitutes. They were tax collectors. And as everybody else was referred to, they were sinners. They were not the holy people. They were not the wealthy people. They were people just moving in, pressing in, trying to get close to Jesus. And that day, as Jesus looked to them, recognizing and knowing what was going on in every one of their lives, he looked at them and he said, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." And I couldn't help but think what those men and women and children must have thought when they heard Jesus say that. And I think that's the same thing for us. What do we think when we see that, when we hear that? When Jesus is saying to us, you are the light of the world. It's up to you. You're the city on the hill shining bright. You're the light that's in the house. Because you know how the light works. A light in a house where there is no electricity, where there is nothing at all but this light. In a light in a house back in the days of Jesus, it had to be in the perfectly positioned place to illuminate the entire area. This light was important because Jesus wanted us to know that we're like this light. In a very dark world, in a place that there is no hope, that there is desperation, where there is despair, we are that light. And he says, I have put you in a place where you are perfectly positioned. You're here in Lynchburg, Virginia, at this place and at this time. Let my light shine through you. But so often we're like the man who's out there swinging the lamp but has forgotten to light the lamp. And so often, wherever we are, in whatever job that we're doing, wherever we go, we're in that place where nothing is even being seen. And we're walking around in darkness, stumbling all over ourselves and all over everything else because we're not shining the light. And so many of us here have accepted Jesus. We asked him to come into our lives. We asked him to be our personal Lord and Savior. And because of that, he's given us this light that he wants to shine. And if he is perfectly